Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Colleen and I'm a registered social worker and mental health therapist. Today I want to answer a question that I get asked all the time. How do I know when therapy is working? Well, the simple answer is when you demonstrate characteristics of resilience. The American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences through mental, emotional, or behavioral flexibility and the ability to adjust to external and internal demands. In this video, I describe 10 characteristics that are common among those who have developed resilience. Having one or many of these characteristics can be a sign of emotional development and demonstrate therapeutic efficacy. Let's begin. Adaptability and flexibility, the ability to access and utilize personal strengths and internal and external resources to quickly adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining flexible thinking and engaging in problem-solving skills. In other words, keeping cool under pressure, brainstorming viable solutions, all while keeping an open mind. For example, the babysitter calls in sick at the last moment. Instead of panicking, the individual remains calm and starts to explore possible solutions without discounting any of them until they have been proven ineffective. Optimistic attitude, the ability to maintain hope and a positive mindset, viewing setbacks as temporary and life challenges as manageable. In other words, recognizing that hard times will pass and life is full of challenges that can be overcome. For example, viewing a job loss as a temporary bump in the road and an opportunity to make a positive change that may not have otherwise happened. Determination and persistence, the ability to remain focused on goals and dreams despite difficulties, obstacles, or setbacks, with continued determination and commitment. In other words, hanging on to dreams and goals despite life's challenges. For example, continuing to learn to play an instrument in attempt to master the skill, even though it might be really hard. Self-awareness, the ability to recognize one's own psychological and physiological needs, acknowledge strengths and weaknesses, understand emotions and reactions, and engage in self-reflection as a means to navigate life. In other words, having a strong connection to self. For example, after a disagreement, having the ability to reflect on what happened, learn from the experience, and take responsibility for one's own part in that disagreement. Emotional regulation, the ability to experience and cope with uncomfortable or difficult emotions without becoming anxious, overwhelmed, dysregulated, or impulsive. In other words, maintaining emotional control under pressure. For example, not becoming angry after being cut off in traffic. Looking for alternative explanations, considering that perhaps the driver was in a rush to help a family member or they were late for a job interview. Strong support network. The ability to cultivate and maintain a network of friends, family, colleagues, and mentors that provide encouragement and assistance in times of need and offer a sense of belonging and community. In other words, resilient individuals surround themselves with positive, supportive people who genuinely love and care for them. For example, forming strong bonds with mutually supportive individuals and ending relationships with individuals who take advantage and exploit them. Problem solving skills. The ability to approach challenges with an action oriented mindset, finding quick and creative ways to solve problems rather than dwelling on the obstacles, recognizing when support is needed, and having the confidence to ask for assistance. In other words, focusing solely on solutions with the understanding that part of the solution may be accessing outside resources. For example, when faced with a challenging problem, the individual explores a variety of solutions, weighs the risks and rewards, and seeks out additional supports if needed. Sense of purpose. The ability to find purpose and meaning from life experiences. Developing an understanding that hardships and struggles are the foundation of learning and personal growth. Oftentimes, the lessons form the basis of one's values and the roots of one's purpose. In other words, our experiences and how we interpret them become the foundation of who we are. For example, when tested, an individual maintain their core values despite pressures from others and see challenges as a segue to greater understanding and enlightenment. Acceptance, the ability to accept that not everything in life can or should be controlled. Acknowledging and accepting that circumstances oftentimes cannot be changed, and trying to do so is a waste of energy. Also, understanding and accepting that all emotions have value and that avoiding, repressing, or ignoring them does not make them go away. In other words, accept the things we cannot change or control, and accept that all emotions are valuable and need to be expressed. For example, an individual learns they have an incurable but treatable disease, accepts the reality of the situation, and focuses their energy on the treatment and not the disease. Self-care habits, the ability to incorporate positive habits into one's life out of self-respect and to build confidence. In other words, engage in activities that promote mental, emotional, and physical well-being, such as exercise, mindfulness, rest, hobbies, the list goes on. For example, an individual who takes the time to make themselves a healthy, nutritious breakfast and then takes the time to eat it, instead of skipping breakfast and rushing out the door. Here is a quick review of the 10 signs of emotional development. Remember, if you have one or more of these characteristics, it may be a sign of personal growth and an indicator that therapy has been effective. Thank you for watching. If you would like to learn more about me or my practice, visit turnianwellness.ca. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, comment, share. Thanks again.